the den of iniquity. Vicinity no pretty, calamity fi hit we any moment. What's a pity? Tomorrow never certain. What dwells behind the curtain? The face of evil smirking with the shifty eyes averting. It's not a steady bubble, could either pop or topple. Many will fall and stumble. Let the dozers gather rubble. From LA to Colorado, Guinea to Burkina Faso. Cannon could reach the towers and the troops will storm the castle. Hey, I say, run, run, come, make we get it. Because the peace that is bestowed upon the meek is overrated. So run, run, come, make we get it. Calling all your daughters and your sons, we come forget it. I say, run, run, come, make we get it. Because the peace that is bestowed upon the meek is overrated. Lord, run, run, come, make we get it. Calling all your daughters and your sons, we come forget it. With the rubble steady rising and hearts are compromising. Convictions here are stifling, making evil appetizing. The fists are steady forming and countenance is falling. Defenses are withdrawing, possibilities are falling. In these your circumstances, evil will make advances. Pick up your sword and lances and be sure to take your stances. Victory is never promised, the battle is upon us. Gather the brave and honest and the righteous in your corners.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another episode of Case Closed. And today we're talking about the environment. But first of all, very important, just as important as the environment, go ahead and click that like button, okay? Click the share button, share the stream, click the subscribe button if you're not already, and click the notification bell. We're going to be talking about consequences and intentions. We're going to be talking about the intentions of those whom seek to regulate things so that we get the right kinds of environmental outcomes in their eyes. And what are the consequences of those regulations? Okay, what are the consequences of inaction? So, Dr. Thunder, how's it going today in the car?
It's all right. Yeah, you caught me. I am on the way to the next engagement, done a bunch of stuff. So I had church and then rehearsal, now this, and then I've got a concert. I'm actually performing with the great vocalist Dee Bridgewater. So you could just do an internet search for her name. She's iconic figure, so this is pretty cool. But I couldn't miss Case Closed. Had to make sure to represent.
Yeah, you're gonna need to project your voice into that mic.
Is it better now?
Yeah, just project, do your thing. You know what's up. So
right,
otherwise it just starts fading into some kind of. So, ladies and gentlemen, we are gonna be having Bernard join us in a little bit. At least he confirmed, and we'll see whom else would join the conversation. Again, broadly speaking, we're talking about consequences and we're talking about intentions. Okay, consequences of inaction and the consequences of action and the intentions of those whom propose certain regulations to curb climate change and whatnot. But we can start out this simple. Let's start out like this. Let's ask Dr. Thunder and anyone also in the chat, right? How do you feel? Okay, I'm asking about your feelings now about climate change and environmentalism in general. Like, where do you stand on that issue? Where is it rank in your priority? Does it keep you up at night, or does it keep you up at night in the sense that, oh yeah, you care about it? Or on the other extreme, it keeps you up at night as in like, yeah, I want it to burn, damn, all this stuff. As long as I get my oil and my cash, to hell with the environment, to hell with all this crap they're saying, or it's pseudoscience, whatever it is. What is your sense of the challenge and the danger that we face? And what do you think about this environmentalism?
Yeah, so I don't lose much sleep over it. I do think that it's important for us to take care of the planet. It's the only one that we have. And to the extent that we can do so while also valuing human life. One of my issues with a lot of the sort of climate change activism is it's clearly biased on one side. They don't seem to really care about the humans that will be affected by many of the policies that they suggest.
Okay, so
Right.
there I say that's easy for you to say, Dr. Thunder. And we'll get to them and their intentions and the consequences of their action. But you just said, okay, it doesn't keep you up at night, but you do think we should take care of the environment in a way that takes into account that keeps human life primary, if you will. So what then,
Yes.
in your mind, what danger are we doing to the environment? How should we take care of it? What in your program, your
Yeah.
life, your view of the world, what exactly is it?
Yeah. General pollution. If we can do something to improve the quality of the air, and honestly, there's been a lot of stuff in the last, say, 30, 40 years that have happened that have substantially increased the quality of the air. So it's not like we're not doing anything. So I think that stuff's important. I do think that there's something to this whole water bottles issue, right?
Mhm.
So there's way too many water bottles, and of course I've got water in here, so I guess I'm just guilty as anybody in a bottle. Um, there's the the whole toxic waste thing, obviously, dumping into uh, you know fresh water, stuff where we're supposed to get drinking water out of, all of that kind of stuff. I mean, I think we need to keep an eye out for it. I do believe in the sort of sacrament of the earth, as it were, and I think treating our environment, our planet, with respect, I think is important. I do actually think that looking at some of the animal species that are endangered, I think
Mhm.
there is some value to that, to try to say, okay, what are we doing that's actually creating, um, you know, endangered species. I think that's something to look at. But here's
Mm.
where I draw the line. I draw the line where any of that stuff uh, seems to be valued at a higher rate than human life. And often the same people that are advocating for protecting the earth and we're killing the earth will also be the ones that are in favor of Noit Roba, all the way up until and beyond the point uh, of, of birth. You have some of these clowns actually advocating even up to 4 or 5 weeks after the baby's been born, you should still be able to, off the baby, because it creates an inconvenience for you. So, uh, so that's more or less where I'm at with that. I think there's a balance. It seems like most of the activism seems to be leaning in one particular direction, pretty hard. And I think there's ways to sort of balance that out. So that's my general initial thoughts.
Okay, so you don't stay up at night about it. Neither do I, by the way. Now, the reason why I don't stay up at night about it is because I'm very skeptical as to two things. Number one, our ability to predict with any kinds of accuracy what things will look like. And it's mainly because of number two. Because any gradual change, right, this is number two now, will have an attendant reaction by human beings, by human systems, right? So if it's the raising of the, shall we say, the raising of the sea levels gradually, people will gradually adopt to that, right? And people
Yep.
will gradually migrate their agriculture all the way to Canada if they have to, right?
Yep.
And because of that, any hellscape that anyone paints for you in the future, which assumes that no one did anything, like they'll show you literally someone just standing there for 50 years while the sun came in, and made everything hot, and there they are now with no shirt in the middle of a desert, right? It's like, no, that's not how it's gonna be. Human ingenuity and on and on and on, right? So number one, there's a predicting factor, and then number two, which is slightly related to number one, is we adapt. We adapt, and it makes the prediction thing harder too. So whenever anyone starts talking about with mathematical models throwing out these kinds of alarmist things in there, I tend to be skeptical. Secondly, I just don't care about people that much, I guess. Okay. And now I'm going to bring it down to like, what does that mean? Does it mean that I'm selfish? No, it's beyond selfish. Okay. Because selfishness would be, I don't care about people, but oh, how about the environment for my daughter? It's like, I don't even think about the future and my daughter's future that way, right? It's more like I'm very hopeful again in that number 2 that I mentioned, which is you'll figure it out. It's like, things happen, all kinds of things happen in life, in the political environment, social environment, economic environment, and the environment that you cannot predict. So picking one thing to start worrying about how your kids are going to deal with it, it's like, maybe you should worry about things that you can control, such as the debt, right? Not making correct economic decisions and not saddling them with those types of burdens. And to be worrying about how my daughter is going to deal with temperature change, it's like, I don't care. I really don't. But let me ask you, the question I'm asking you is, why don't you stay up at night about it? Okay. I just told you in quite explicit terms, very stark terms, why I don't really care. Okay. Why don't you care?
Well, so part of the reason that I don't care is that there's a lot of misinformation. So one of the things is, what am I supposed to be caring about, right? So what is it? Ocasio-Cortez, she says, 12 years the world's going to end if we don't do X, Y, and Z. I mean, there's no science based on that. It's just not true.
An Inconvenient Truth by Al Gore and all the predictions that he made back then in the early 2000s.
Right. An Inconvenient Truth. That's another great one. While he's still flying around on his private jet. And see, part of the reason that I don't take it seriously is because the folks that are claiming that, the world's going to end and X, Y, and Z if we don't do X, Y, and Z, but you're the ones that are contributing way more than the average, taxpayer. Private jets. You're also living on the coasts for the most part. And if the ocean is going to, swallow up a bunch of the land on the coast, it's funny because, I mean, that beach front property that you own, it doesn't seem like a good investment, right?
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot of that kind of stuff. Another reason that I think it's hogwash is it used to be called global warming, but when we had successive years of cooling, then they just started calling it climate change, and it was easier to make goofy arguments based on something that's called climate change, right? In other words, if they can predict it well or not, it just proves their point. So if they're wrong about what's going to happen, they say, hey, it's climate change. We don't know. It's getting erratic. It's getting unpredictable. See, that's the problem. They can make any kind of argument stick to a moving target, climate change. But when you were stating something very specific, global warming, then if it wasn't actually warming up, then you were going to have an issue, because people were going to say, hey, look, the evidence shows that it's not going to, it hasn't been warming up. So yeah. So
that's why
those are a couple of reasons why I don't, and it's not that I don't care, it's that I'm not worried about it. It's not even on the top 10 list, top 20, top 100, top 200, top 1,000 list of priorities for me. I mean, I try to do what I can do to, reduce wasting stuff, if I can, and that's pretty much as far as it goes.
100%. We got the man, the myth, the legend out here from the Midwest. Somewhere out there in the Midwest is LAR. I believe I'm right?
I'm in Texas now.
Yeah, Texas is definitely Midwest. I go there from time to time. I go to Plano, Texas when I'm there. I haven't really been anywhere outside of there. I heard there's a lot of Nigerians in Houston. That's a good reason to stay away from there. So maybe I'll find maybe I'll go to Austin or something like that. But LAR, we are in this conversation talking about the consequences of global warming, the consequences of not doing anything, and also the consequences of doing some of the things that some people would have you do. The consequences, for example, of, let's say, the Green New Deal by Ocasio-Cortez. But before we get into, well, do the consequences actually match up with what you say? You say you care about people, but things you're proposing are going to kill poor people, right? Let's say. Let's talk about how you feel about global warming. What exactly, are you an environmentalist? Where does it rank in terms of your concerns? Do you stay up at night about it? What is your sense of the danger that we face? Do you care about global warming, Eliar?
I'm not a person who overconsumes anything. I don't believe in like overconsumption. Just because, too much of anything is a bad thing. But be it that I'm from America, I don't believe nobody in America talking about they care about anybody. This is not what this country is built on. This is a lie of all lies. It's just something to say you care about so somebody can give you some money, so you can spend the money on what you really care about. Is global warming a thing? Well, since we're saying it's the hottest summer in the last 2 decades, okay. Did we know overfishing is going to be a problem, and overconsumption of fossil fuels is going to be a problem? Yeah, we've been knew that, but who cared? Like, let's be honest. You only care if it affects the thing you like. I'm sorry.
No. Go ahead.
If there's a French fry shortage, I'm a killer. Then global warming is going to be a problem. Like, hey, look, we need to fix this potato shortage. But
is there still a wings shortage, by the way?
And there's a lot of people who care about that. And by the way, if you go into any grocery store, the drumsticks and the thighs and the breasts are still cheap. But you know what? You're too lazy to cook a drumstick. Drumsticks used to be what everybody loved.
Yeah, that's the thing.
So these people are full of it, man.
Yeah, I mean, the old cartoons didn't used to show like chicken wings. They'll show the drumstick. Okay. So you don't overconsume. That's the way in which you, shall we say, play your part, right? And you think it's common sense not to overconsume. Dr. Thunder mentioned before something to the end of stewardship of the earth. He didn't say those exact words, but there's some common sense things in there about like not messing things up, not shitting where you eat or whatever. So that's kind of where we are with that. But let's move on. I want to ask LAR to comment on something that Dr. Thunder said, which is the first world problem aspect of this. Okay? Dr. Thunder said, hey, Al Gore told us, I don't know, was it 2000, 2001, whenever it was, that the world was going to end by 2010, right? It was going to be horrible. You could go watch Inconvenient Truth again and see the things he was saying, okay? And in 2010, when Deep Sea Horizon spilled the oil, the ocean was never going to be the same again. The ocean was completely ruined. Now, nobody, like Deep Sea Horizon, what? Nobody knows that ever happened. It's gone, okay? But that was a little side quest I just made. Dr. Thunder's point was that it is the elites, it's the people who fly private jets, right? And use massive amounts of energy, right? That, to tell other people that are just farming their lands to not use, shall we say, pesticides or not use coal or whatever. So you have this very weird thing that happens, okay? Not to get too conceptual, but I think you already got the question that I'm trying to ask here, okay? Or what I'm trying to ask you to comment on. But what's kind of weird is this. When people get off the I'm struggling to make ends meet, level, and then they go up to the level of having first world problems, the funny thing is they actually are more wealthy, using more energy and causing more problems. And then they turn around and tell the people whom are down there still on the struggle level to change their behavior. It's like, no, America uses way more energy than Sri Lanka or whatever. These are the people that you're telling you can't have taken the steps. You're 5 steps ahead because you used DDT, pesticides, and all this fertilizers and all this stuff, and then now you're turning around to these other people who are still struggling on low level. Now that you're in the penthouse feeling righteous, you're telling everybody not to do that stuff.
They're pulling the ladder back up.
Exactly. That's one way to put it. So what do you think about this pulling the ladder back up thing here? It almost seems like a natural thing that when people start climbing up, they start getting more self-righteous, not realizing that they're a bigger problem than the people below.
So you're in architecture. The higher you go up in the building, the hotter the floor is. You get what I'm saying? Like, you got people in the penthouse, like you said, man, y'all using too much energy down there. You know, bro, you burning the whole block down just to keep AC in your penthouse, and it's my problem? How come you can't scale back? It's not sometimes a first world problem. It's kind of a luxury suite problem. You know, but hey, if you're driving a Rolls Royce, do you care about gas? If you have a private jet, do you care about gas? Do you go, you know what? I'm gonna fly Southwest. I'm gonna fly Southwest so I can save my private jet from gas. Do you care? No. But as far as an upper problem, I think sometimes we leave out with global warming, it's a government issue. Because you know who burns the most energy in the world, in the United States? Our government, our military. Them ships and those planes ain't cheap. Them trucks and them Hummers ain't cheap. You know, those subs ain't cheap. So the vast majority of our GDP does go to the military, and they use the vast majority of the resources. If we want to chill this problem, you know what we could do? Scale back the military. You know what they're not going to do? Scale back the military.
Let me ask you this, LAR. And don't run now. Don't run away from the question. Okay, you're gonna need to accept responsibility for the United States. Don't go back. No, it's not my project. I abandoned the whole thing. I'm gonna let it burn. Start from the beginning. Hotep, whatever. No shade. Okay. You are you're in commander in chief. Would you scale back the military?
Hell yeah.
Oh, really? That's interesting.
If I was the commander in chief, I would scale back the military for two reasons. One, because we create more enemies by being in every country and everybody else's business, and having to let people into this country who have contempt for this country, and they try to do stuff. Because we create problems abroad that get brought home, basically. And two, we could use the military to help rebuild this country. They rebuild stuff everywhere else. Why don't we use them for what they're necessary for? Helping rebuild this country. We know it's cracking apart. So, but I'm gonna get shot 2 weeks into being president. So,
if I was president, okay. So you're taking more isolationist. George Washington warned us against entanglements. That's the way he put it. Well, he was an introvert, so that was his thing. It's like, don't get into entanglements. But okay,
he was
Dr.
banging
Thunder.
slaves. He was into entanglements.
Hey, yeah, those are low consequence
Comment of the day.
It's like, I ain't gonna put my business out that like that, LAR. I'm like, come on, bro. Thought he was cool. So, Dr. Thunder, in continuing here with the theme of what the first world intends to hoist upon the third world, what the penthouse, as LAR put it, wants to hoist upon the lower people. Let's look at something contemporary right now that's going on. This is Sri Lanka. Let's talk about agriculture in Sri Lanka. You may have heard Sri Lanka in the news lately. They're broke. Things are affecting them in terms of the interest rates going up, inflation going up. But part of the big reason why they owe money in the first place is because they took money from such Western bodies like the International Monetary Fund, and tied to that money is all this, hey, you gotta not use this type of pesticide. You can't use this type of, shall we say, fertilizer, and all these other types of environmental regulations. And now they're suffering the consequences. So I'm going to play this video. and I want our reactions to it now, because now we're getting more into the consequences of what some of these policies are and whom it actually affects, which is not the people in the penthouse, by the way.
Sachs, to your point, we just discussed this last week with the farmers. You know, if you're in a frontier market trying to adopt the regulations and the strategic goals for the environment of the emerging market is like two giant hops. It's probably insurmountable.
Well, look, there's a strong analogy between the populist uprising that's happening in the Netherlands with the Dutch farmers and the populist uprising that's happening in Sri Lanka. Basically, they're implementing the same policies. This is that Sri Lanka is further down the road, and it's a poorer country to begin with. So, like Chamath mentioned, in April of last year, the Sri Lankan government banned the importation of chemical fertilizers and pesticides used in farming. They, again, went with this idea they thought they could encourage organic farming. So the result of that was that overall production, agricultural production, fell by a third, and rice production fell by 43%. And rice is, the biggest staple in the country. So now you got people there starving or going hungry. You've got massive food insecurity, as well as the whole economy basically has been crippled. And the result of that is society has essentially collapsed. So, now the question is, why did the Sri Lankan government feel compelled to adopt these policies? A lot of it has to do with the fact they're getting these massive loans from the World Bank and the IMF, and the World Bank and so forth are imposing these ESG requirements. So Sri Lanka has something like a 98% ESG rating, even as their economy and society is collapsing. How is that possible? Well, they're doing a great job following the prescriptions of the global elites at Davos. I mean, this sort of global elite flies into Davos from Brussels and Washington on their private planes. They have panels on ESG, and then they prescribe these policies for countries like Sri Lanka. And this is the result. I mean, it's crazy. They've been telling us for years that somehow there's no trade-off between their environmentalist policies and creating a healthy, growing economy. And this is an example of that's not true. There are real trade-offs here. And the crazy thing is that the elites expect poor people in Sri Lanka to make up for their environmental emissions. And it's not really fair at all.
Here's another example. In March of
Okay, we get it. Maybe I'll play a couple more minutes of it here, but we get the point here. Dr. Thunder brought up the idea of first world problems, people at the beach and in their private jets, he says, telling us about what we need to do now to reduce our emissions. And here we have a whole country kind of experiencing the same thing now. Okay, people are starving because they wanted to go woke, if you will.
Of 2020, Sri Lanka enforced one of the world's strictest, China-esque COVID-19 lockdowns, despite one of the lowest death rates.
This takes us down another rabbit hole. But Dr. Thunder, okay, let's not open too many rabbit holes here. Dr. Thunder, just kind of continue to comment, if you will, on this whole thing of the way it's described here is you're trying to make the poor make up for your particular, because you're the one that polluted. The people whom are not developed did not pollute by definition. They haven't gotten there yet, right? So you are the one that did all that dirty stuff. Call it the Industrial Revolution, and now you're in your penthouse sipping tea in order to make yourself feel better. Now that you have all the steel and all the fuel and all the jets, what else is gonna make you feel better? It's gonna make you feel better by doing some kind of weird spiritual whatever thing, right? And you're gonna mistake the spiritual with this kind of environmental cause, and now you're making other people pay for it. What do you think about what we just heard right now about Sri Lanka, Dr.
Yeah, so you could have named, we could have named the show today, Case Closed, Climate Activists Don't Care About Black Lives. Okay, now follow me here. Remember, it's the elites and the Hollywood elites, the upper, the upper class folks that are criticizing folks on how we don't supposedly value black people, we don't value black lives, and Black Lives Matter and all that kind of stuff. Now, of course, we find out that this stuff is nothing but the leadership was shills. They're don't actually believe in the whole the value of black life. They believe in the value of the LGBTQ agenda, but not necessarily of black lives, especially not black men and boys, right? So we know that to be the case. But all of the elites, they bought into this, and if you weren't drinking the Kool-Aid, then something was wrong with you. So then you turn around, and these same folks, almost all of the same people, are the ones that are in favor of these climate change policies that are absolutely stifling, crippling to poor people. It makes, all of these policies. Okay, so there was a calculus that during the whole pandemic that, the sort of left-leaning folks, they didn't want you to talk about this. And that is the fact that per 1% unemployment rate, that is equivalent to 100,000 lives. So when the economy tanks and it ends up with 1% more or 2% more, however many percent more of unemployment, each 1% of employment is equivalent to 100,000 lives lost. Because what happens is when people are unemployed, disproportionately, poverty-stricken folks, they're the ones that get hit the worst, and they don't have very much of a buffer between them and the concrete, and then between the concrete and starvation, right? So 1 percentage point equals 100,000 lives. And so when people were just trying to think about this thing, does it make a lot of sense for us to shut down the economy, knowing that shutting down the economy is most assuredly going to have that impact? And then if you compare that number to the number of people that actually died from something that has a 99% survival rate, right? So now if you take that thought process and you apply that to the climate change business, when you impose certain kinds of restrictions, it has the same kind of impact on the economy, on folks, on people that are already living paycheck to paycheck. I'm a fan of advanced technology like anybody is. I want to see things advance as quickly as possible. However, they need to advance in an organic manner, in a way so that the economy can absorb. It can benefit from the technology, as opposed to the government coming in and saying, guess what? Everybody's driving electric cars now, and all of those gas guzzler cars, you have to get rid of those now. And I don't care how poor you are. I don't care if the fact that it's going to make it so that you starve to death, that your kids die. I don't care about any of that. This is what the policy is now. And they'll act in such a way as to think that they're actually the good ones. They're the good people. They're the ones that really care about you. They're really the saviors of the Black people. And I say Black people because disproportionately the poor among us are Black people. They're Black people. So the same folks that are voting lockstep with the Democrats, who are the proponents of these kind of policies, are the ones that are going to be disproportionately thinned out, by these kinds of policies. So the whole thing, it's total hogwash. Look, let's advance things. Let's do whatever we can do. Let's try to incentivize the embracing of new technology as much as possible. But when you do it by force, when the government says you have to do this, or we're going to block this, or whatever, when the government does that, it is having that effect. They are literally killing people by implementing these kinds of policies. They're literally killing people. And so if you're okay with literally killing people, then okay, I guess these policies are for you. I'm not okay with just killing people. So we have to find a better way to implement, positive policies. I'm giving them a lot of credit by calling them positive policies, because I don't think that there's much positive about it. I think the real agenda is population control.
Okay, let's pause to give a round of applause over here. $10 super chat, the first super chat of the show. Man of Tomorrow in the building says, where is your credible climate science research to back your opinion? Of course, 100%. The data is very important. However, we're taking at face value that there is human effect, on the environment. To say that there isn't would be a little bit kind of insane. However, there are no solutions, there are only trade-offs, right? So we're looking at consequences, the consequences of inaction, which is the consequences of, hey, don't do anything, let's see where it goes, or shall we say, let's adopt or adapt organically, versus the consequences of a top-down type of action, which would not only have to be correct as to the predictions, but correct as to the pushing of the right buttons, okay, but also has to ignore the direct consequences, such as we just showed, of telling countries like Sri Lanka to adapt certain first world environmentalist policies when they can't the economy is not set up for it. And I think it speaks to Dr. Thunder's point that because our economy has organically evolved to a particular point, we can say certain types of things and we can start looking at the next step. But to tell someone who's 2 steps behind, they haven't even industrialized yet, that they need to quit this fertilizer and watch these particular emissions and all those other kinds of things, and we see real life consequences in the sense that the economy cannot handle it, then what do we do? But so LAR.
One second. I just wanted to add this last point. And even if, say for instance, if America reduced their reduced our carbon footprint, our carbon emissions, say to 0. Okay, to 0. China is the real problem. So us reducing our carbon emissions does not actually do much to actually fix the problem. If their science is credible, it doesn't actually do much to fix the problem, because China is the real egregious infractor or whatever.
Indeed. So LAR, about the consequences. Okay, we just watched this video.
And I didn't claim. I didn't cite any policies. I didn't say specific policies are killing people. I'm saying when you implement policies, it creates poverty, and poverty is what kills people.
Poverty kills people, but also we just looked at in Sri Lanka the direct result of IMF giving money to Sri Lanka and telling them not to use or telling them to incentivize organic agriculture and the production of rice plummeting. Right? That's actual people starving, right? So this is not about science. This is about consequences, right? And the right type of action that you want to take. And to be honest, I already kind of laid my cards on the table as to why I don't care about certain types of things. So I can be fine with implementing environmentalist policies that says I'm implementing environmental policies for aesthetic reasons, for the beauty of the earth, without human beings, this cancer on the earth here, right? I can take the whole thing like, hey, I think human beings are cancer on the earth. I want life to continue. I want the earth to be pristine. We've been messing up, and it's not going to be hard to make a case that human beings are kind of trash, right? It's not going to be hard to make a case that human beings are not worth it. Ain't that right, Eliar? So, but the point what I don't like is the whole I care about people thing. But meanwhile, the policies that you're saying, such as this IMF stuff, let's go saddle third world countries with some of our burdens, is actually killing people. But anyways, LAR, what did you think about what was said? Because again, you described it well as a penthouse problem. The penthouse is hot, and they're telling everyone else to reduce their energy consumption. And then we see in real time what's going on in Sri Lanka. What are your comments, and also anything that's been said by Dr. Thunder as well?
Well, ultimately, what I think about it as this goes on is, if it's like The Big Short, the movie The Big Short, using climate change. You got people who have gotten greedy and have done this, that, and the third. And what they wind up doing was they ruined a bunch of stuff. And then they're so far gone, they want you to be stupid just like them. and not many of us are betting, that people are incompetent. So in the case of Sri Lanka, you shouldn't listen to people who are not from your area tell you what to do farming when they're not there. You were doing just fine until you listen to them. And if I'm not mistaken, that was Europe, and at the time Greece was falling, Italy was falling, so your whole economy tanking, but I'm gonna take advice from you. And thus now it's ruining putting food on the table in my own country. Now, as part of I say that to say with the climate part is this. Like what Doc was bringing up with China. China uses a lot of energy. But ironically, everything's going to get blamed on America, because guess who's the template for all this effery? America. Guess who's the template for using up everybody's stuff for their own gain? America. So it's like, well, could have, and guess who's telling people to worry about the climate? Americans. It's like, bro, you won't even get a Prius. I want you to change the climate, but you got the biggest Escalade you can find, and you're telling somebody in the country riding, small cars and small motorcycles that, hey, we need to come together. No, you need to get your lazy butt out of that truck or SUV and get into something smaller. Because our mindset is the problem. It's not just the way we go about taking from the earth is the problem. The earth has a way of replenishing itself. We just have a way of trying to destroy the stuff before it replenishes. If you think about like what Doc was talking about farming, it's that bad where people then forgot how you farm in seasons. You don't have to have the same food 12 straight months. You farm this, you harvest that. When that is growing, you start farming the other thing. And then when that gets done, you harvest that. And then when that grows, you harvest the other thing. That's how you do it. Everything grows seasonally. And we're living in a world where we forgot as a world what grows seasonally and what to grow seasonally. And here's the kicker. You can ask Siri. You can ask Alexa. Both of them ladies will tell you, but you'd rather listen to a Megan Thee Stallion song or a twerk video. So what are we using the technology for climate change for anyways, except for X videos and Pornhub? It just doesn't matter.
Okay, so let me make a point here. And I want to ask Dr. Thunder this. Okay, so we understand that actions have consequences and also inaction has consequences. We're going to take at face value that, the things that we do wrong, you could forget the climate change aspect and let's just talk about environmentalism in general, in terms of trashing things and just, not taking care of the earth, right? So the ways in which we can improve. And then you say, hey, some of the policies that these people are trying to implement to improve things actually have really bad effects. And we can take examples, right? You can't be telling the third world or the poor to do the kinds of things that that you did in order to make you rich, or not to do the kind of things that you did in order to make you rich. However, somebody could say, or maybe I'll picture a man of tomorrow saying, look, these policies could lead to government programs that provide financing, capital for certain types of development of technology. And these black people that you're talking about, black men, can benefit from these things. And it's not the case that these programs and the largesse that is put out there by the government should only be taken up by, some immigrants or some white people or the Arabs or whatever, which tends to be the case. But hey, stop looking at only the downside. How about uplifting the black people, right, with a push towards implementation of technology? You've already said, Dr. Thunder, that, hey, you are down for embracing technology, and you may have to drop your hatred of centralization for a second here, and let's work together and say, hey, look, there is a way. Granted, I'm saying I'm going to do some centralized action, But with this centralized action, I can actually provide capital that if black men put themselves in the right position, they can actually ride this train of the next industrial revolution. What do you have to say about that?
So, gentrification. So gentrification it's a positive thing, right? Because you're going into dilapidated communities and you are ripping them apart and building all new buildings, new sidewalks, new, hey, that's a positive thing. And you know what? It is positive in that it's more beautiful and newer and better and nicer stuff. But what I'm talking about is the people that got displaced by the nicer, newer stuff that they now can't afford because the cost of living in those new buildings is way more than they can afford. They just can't afford it. Okay. So, so this is the issue. This is the basic issue that I have with our entire conversation.
So let me pause right there, because if I may, the issue is, I'm representing Man of Tomorrow now. Man of Tomorrow is going to come back and say, look, the problem is you're overrepresented amongst the poor. It's not things disproportionately affect the poor. Everything always disproportionately affects the poor, okay? And the poor will always be with us, and they tend to get poorer, by the way. That's just the way it is. And the rich tends to get richer. The problem is you are overrepresented in the poor, and I'm giving you this opportunity now, they would say, of a government program. What's wrong with that? The GI Bill was good. Some kind of reconstruction in the 40s was good. Social Security program, at least some people for a while there, ran well. I'm going to give you this one-time opportunity, green money, black men, entrepreneurship, get that LLC, and then take part in this and get out of the problem zone, which is the poor. What would you say about that?
So, yes, that's true. The poor will always be with us, and the poor are always disproportionately impacted. That's true, and I don't disagree with that. However, remember, the folks that are trying to get us to adopt these policies are the ones that are supposedly trying to eradicate poverty, right? They're trying to do away with poverty. They're any policies that are suggested by the other side are unfeeling because they will disproportionately hurt the poor people. You don't care about poor people. You don't care about people, right? So I'm going to demonize your policies, right? Based on that talking point. But the hypocrisy of this is that when you put certain policies in place, they are going to tend to disproportionately impact the poor. And that is policies that would be proposed by Democrats and Republicans. The Democrats are just trying to act as though their policies would not affect the poor people, or they just act like they don't care. What they do is they have their trump card is, but the earth will have nowhere to stay. If the earth is not here, then we have nothing. I mean, I hear some of these folks use talking points like, who was it? He's got a late night talk show. I can't think of the guy's name right now.
Kimball?
No, it's not Kimball. It's one of the other guys, and he, he says, you know what? I don't mind paying another $2 per gallon, because, it's such a important cause or whatever, this kind of thing. And the thing is like, dude, this is like a rich guy cause, right? And you're making poor people pay for it. And then you're telling them that it's not a big deal that you got to pay $2 per gallon. And I think the cat also said $2 more a gallon, because I have a Tesla anyway, or something like this. Cats can't afford a freaking Tesla. You're
that was Stephen Colbert.
Yeah, there it is. And so you are the cats that, you're supposedly the defenders and the protector of the poor people, when that benefits you, but then you have a policy that you want, and it's not because they're going to save the earth. It's because they see the money trail. And that's another thing. The whole thing is a money grab. And so these sort of altruistic sort of, arguments and, I'm feeling and it's all about the earth. No, they see the money.
You see, that's the thing, Dr. Thunder. I don't buy the altruistic arguments on either side. Me neither. Typically, that's the first thing I remove from my world when it comes to any type of argument at all. If there's any heartstrings, I just find the heartstrings and cut it off because it tends to be irrelevant, right? We can talk about the heartstrings later, right? After we see how the logic plays out, then you can go make your heartfelt decision. But don't put the heart into the equation because I don't. It cannot be quantified. So I'm challenging your heart, saying you talking about caring for the black people whom got removed from the gentrified area. I'm like, like if it's all good and the neighborhood got better. If, for example, one black entrepreneur was able to take advantage of the greening of things, but 100 other black people got washed away, what's the big deal? Like, what, isn't that the way things tend to happen anyways? As you've already said, poor would always be with us, and they will always be disproportionately affected. Why do you do the heartstrings? So that's not it's a rhetorical question, Dr. Thunder. But let me rephrase the actual question. The actual question is this: isn't this just about what you think will work versus what you don't think will work, right? Why get into the whole intentions of the this or the that? It's like you think that certain policies don't work, right? And I would suspect that they have a general shape, a general form. You can be specific about the policies, or you can say what types of policies that you think don't work. Because I don't buy anybody who starts talking about the people that are affected on either case. Yeah.
No, I agree. I agree with that. I don't know that I have a comment that states that any better than you just said. I mean, I get the feelings crap out of there, and let's talk about what the actual issues are and percentages of people that are going to be affected, and then make a decision that has the smallest impact while moving forward, has the smallest impact on poor people, on people that can't defend themselves, on whatever.
Fair enough. Fair. I like the not defend themselves point. I like that. Yeah, because that's a fair statement. That's not a heartstring statement. It's saying, hey, there's some people who are not in the room, they don't have agency. We're over here making decisions, and we don't want to just be dumping on them. I think that's 100% fair, right? It's not even a heart thing. It's just like, okay, agency, people are not deciding. Let's not be doing things to just completely off-gas the problem upon them, which, by the way, is what we started with, which is you're saying, okay, that I think I agree too, 100%. That's why I played the thing on Sri Lanka, whereby you have these first world organizations coming into places and telling them what to do with regards to environmentalism, and it's ruining these economies because the economies are not set up to be at this, stage 10. They're still on stage 4, okay? Like, you can't just force them to start doing certain things. I'm going to say one thing, and I'm going to ask LAR a question.
Yeah, I got to get going. Get going. Let me just say this one last thing, and then I'll split. It's been good talking with y'all on this topic. I think it's an important topic. I just want to say this last thing, and that is, when you pull up your Tesla to your house and you go inside, you pull it in the garage and you plug it up, what is creating the electricity that is fueling the car?
Sweet coal.
That's right. Fossil fuel.
Vibranium.
It's right. It's fossil fuel. And that's something that I think is one of the more disingenuous aspects of this whole, if you're not driving an electric car, you're somehow part of the problem. You are hurting the earth. The fact is that when they plug their car up, though the actual vehicle is not emitting any carbon, they're using fossil fuels to provide the electric, which is charging the battery in the car. And on that note, I'm out.
On that note, he is out. Thank you very much, Dr. Thunder. I think you came in and you stated your points rather clearly. And your point basically is that centralization in terms of decision making is not the route to for an economy to adapt to change. If I were to put it in one sentence, centralized decisions with regards to policy is not the best route to take with regards to adapting to gradual change, such as globalization. Global climate change. Okay, and I'm going to make a point I was making about technology, and then I'm going to throw it to you, LAR. The point I was making about technology is that you can force, let's say, third world countries, or it's actually perfect for third world countries to use certain types of technology to skip steps. What do I mean by that? You can skip the step of having to have landlines, landlines on the ground, landline phone, blah, blah. You go straight to cell phones. Most, shall we say, developing countries did that, okay? All over Africa, they skipped it. Same thing with banking. You can skip having to have banks and go straight to fintech in your phone, right? And they did that. But it's not easy to just skip fertilizer and skip oil, because there's something particular about that stuff, that energy intensive production of food and whatnot, that you can't just replace. There is no easy replacement for that, okay? And the energy density and reliability of 1 gallon of petrol, let's say gasoline, is something that's amazing, and some people tend not to understand that the reliability that this particular 1 gallon right here will give me this much, and it's contained in 1 gallon, as opposed to I need a windmill with this much space and I got to rely upon the storage of the energy and if you compare it, energy density and many other types of things, overall impact and cost, there's a reason why beyond the oil lobby, there's a reason why oil is still here and it's still so strong. My technological solution, by the way, is nuclear. But anyways, let's get back to what we're talking about, okay? We're over here talking about gentrification and who's going to be affected the most. And I asked the question, well, if Black people are getting affected the most, well, why don't Black people get themselves out of the problem group, which is you're overrepresented in the poor, hence you keep on complaining about things when things affect the poor. How about you just get the hell out of there so that you stop complaining? What do you have to say about that, LAR?
I'm going to be terrible on what I'm about to say. So the thing about it, I don't look at it as, like Dr. Thunder was talking about, you want to be represented in those rooms so you don't get taken advantage of or thrown under the bus. But to me, that's how it's actually set up, is I need to take advantage of you because you're not in the room, and I'm not going to look out for your best interest. And I'm going to take advantage of you until you come into the room and play this game with me. So it's hard to be, even if you get out of the poor part, now you're into this ridiculous game you got to play with the people who are dumping on you and making sure you stay poor. So I'm more like, hey, listen, you can get out of poverty, yeah, but how are you gonna get away from these people? Because they're not bringing you any kind of solace. They're not bringing their technology to you to actually make your life actually better. They're bringing their technology to you in hopes that you utilize their technology so you can pay for stuff with whatever resources you get out of that exchange. So it's like, creating, to me, people create a new revenue stream by throwing people under the bus and making them part of their economy.
Okay, so LAR, let's dig into where you're at right here, okay? Because you're talking about people, okay, which is kind of your thing. It's perfect kind of juxtaposition right here. The last thing I ever think about or talk about is people. And it tends to be the first thing you think about. You're talking about, okay, I'm now out of this swamp of poverty. What kind of people are on this other side? Are they helping me? Are they going to bring me solace? Okay, so let me ask you this. This is a problem that is a permanent human problem, right? It's not going to go away. not every group is going to like you, right? There's a reality of groups. So how about you just focus on your group, making your group better? What would you say about that versus all the other groups that don't like you, all the other groups that are putting roadblocks in front of you? You know what I'm saying. What you got to say?
I would say that, let me get a little bit, I hate being serious, but I'll do it for small increments and being spiritual. If the world is already created and we believe in God, for the most part, the world provided everything we needed already, and it keeps providing the things we need. Where you keep finding that we have issues is where people overdo it out of greed. So where you find famine, normally you find somebody somewhere else wanting more than they need at the expense of everybody in a particular place. You know, so the climate to me is not going to change. The climate has always changed because we don't see dinosaurs anymore. So hey, you know, it's a reason, right? You know, but as far as like the people element, it's just one of those things where a lot of us have a hard time. We've accepted this melting pot idea, especially in America, when the world was never a melting pot. People were where they were at, minding their own business, living the way that they've lived for thousands of years, and people come to their homes and their land and say, hey, you know what? You need to live like me. No, because how you live doesn't apply here. Because all we're trying to, it's like we're trying to make a bunch of outposts everywhere. Like everybody needs their own little embassy in somebody else's land to make them feel comfortable. And it's at the expense of everybody else.
Makes sense. Let's continue a little bit here on this video talking about Sri Lanka, and he's going to talk about some of the other policies that perhaps they adopted, were forced to adopt in order to follow suit with the woke Davos crowd, and how it doesn't work. Point being, you have to recognize what stage you are in a race, right? You're out here hustling. You have all these other countries that are miles ahead of you, these other groups of people that are miles ahead of you, these other individuals that are miles ahead of you. And they come to you and they tell you how you should run the race. You should be skeptical about that right off rip, right? They're like, why are you trying to help me? Why are you giving me money, telling me the policies I should follow? They will say, oh, it's because it's for the good of everybody. And we are on top and we get to decide what's the good for everybody. I'm just saying practically, pragmatically, you need to be skeptical of that. If you got to play dirty, and by that I mean burn some dirty stuff, burn some dirty coal and whatnot in order to catch up, use some fertilizers that the West says you're not supposed to use, you better damn grow that rice with that fertilizer because those damn kids need to eat, okay? And we're going to get to the underlying conspiracies that some people may have as to, well, maybe this is all about population control. Dr. Thunder mentioned it earlier. Maybe this has nothing to do with people suffering, okay? And which I'm perfectly fine with. You can give me an argument saying, hey, I'm doing environmentalism for the earth, not for people. I know that my policies, this policy that I'm saying, as a matter of fact, cut the population in half is my policy because I don't really care about people, right? That kind of a thing. But we shall continue in that line. Let's see what else is going on here in this video. Shout out, ladies and gentlemen, click the like button, share the stream. We're having an important conversation about consequences of global warming, consequences of action and consequences of inaction, and some of the motives that drive some people's action and inaction in this regard. Super chat, click the like button, share the stream, subscribe if you have not already, notification bell, all that good stuff.
COVID-19 lockdowns, despite one of the lowest death rates and infection rates in the world. And so for nearly 3 months, it literally crippled the economy and the livelihood of citizens there. But here's where it gets crazy. Then they actually go against global best practice and they ban the burial of COVID-19 victims, claiming that it could lead to groundwater contamination. I don't even know how they came up with this. But you know what this did was it significantly undermined the small minority of the country that is Muslim, because a religious practice there, is you bury your dead. And then that caused great pain to them. And then it hurt all these international relationships with all these Gulf nations. So then you come all the way around, and then you go back to those same Gulf nations a few months later, and you're like, can I have subsidized oil? And they're like, no, not so much.
And just to paint a picture of what's happening there right now, as I mentioned before, it's pretty much a state of emergency. You can see various videos trending on social media.
Okay, now, so this has brought us to a particular point that I wanted to kind of touch on it as we start landing the plane here on Case Closed every Sunday, 4 p.m. Eastern Time. Okay, where we've come to now is just something that we can kind of understand, which is the global inflation that's hitting everywhere right now. Interest rates going up as a result of central banks, and which is part of why countries like Sri Lanka are kind of defaulting on their loans. When interest rates go up and inflation is also going up, if you're in debt, you're in a bad position. No one needs to explain that to you. You don't need the macroeconomic data. You've been broke before, you've been in debt before. You know that when inflation hits, you're not in a good position, right? You're in a good position when you have cash, and debt is the opposite of cash. Don't tell me I got cash, but I got debt too, because it cancels each other out. Then you're not the group we're talking about. But LAR, okay, where are you feeling the pinch of the inflation the most? Is it in the gas prices that everyone is saying? Is it in food prices? Do you not feel the pinch? Are you up there in the penthouse somewhere not caring?
I'm a working class person, so I feel the pinch, but I think I can mitigate it. You know, I grew up in the 80s, man. We were poor then, so for me it's like, okay, like it's not a big deal. Like, you keep your expenses to a minimum. If you're in debt, you're in debt, but don't keep adding debt to your debt. That's gonna make it worse. I think what we're at, especially in America, as far as inflation, our pinch isn't actually inflation. Our pinch is we don't want to downsize our lifestyle. You wouldn't be in as much debt if you decided, you know what? I don't need to buy that. You know what? I know I like that and I've got accustomed to that, but I could get rid of that. That's where we're at. You know, like we're think about it. Ever since there was a recession, 15 years ago, people have been buying bigger and bigger gas guzzling trucks. Ever since the price of gas went up, I've seen more pickup trucks, SUVs, sports cars, luxury cars than ever. People can't say, you know what, I'm gonna get a regular old Camry, and I'm gonna get, let me get a Corolla and get this 40 miles a gallon. Nope, can't do that. Can't do that. I gotta get the most expensive thing I could buy. Food prices, yeah, they go up, but is it the food price that's going up, or is it your appetite that you can't turn down? Like, I see it all the time when I go out. Like, I was at work and I don't hardly eat fast food, but I was hungry, so I went to Whataburger. And the number one is like $10 now. And I'm like, dang, it's ridiculous. A burger, some fries with a cheeseburger with fries and a drink is $10 basically. Well, I know what I'm not gonna be eating every day. A cheeseburger, fries, and a drink. Like, it's not happening. But if you go into the grocery store, you'll notice this. Like when you're talking about the wings earlier, I was actually talking to Solo. Like, we was talking about this food like a month ago, 2 months ago. And I was like, just walk around the grocery store and look at all the items that you can cook, and look at that price is not really that high. Everything that we're accustomed to, we want to eat so much, that's what keeps going up. I want to eat wings, so I'm gonna just look over all the other parts of the chicken. Like, that's cheaper though. I need prepackaged meals. Everybody who says this is expensive to eat, why don't you go in the produce section? Why not? Like, why don't you go to the produce section and get some nice produce and eat some fruits and vegetables? It's cheaper than going buy steak every doggone day. It's cheaper than the seafood you want. But no, you need that extra stick of butter just to drizzle over the top, of your salmon. You need to deep fry an Oreo just to make you feel good. Same thing with gas. Yeah, the gas is expensive, but do you really need to make all these runs? Or if you think you're gonna save on gas and food, Uber Eats is really your option? Seriously?
Oh man, food delivery is one of the most addictive things out there. I don't know. There's going to be consequences. 10 years from now, there's going to be people in food addict, food delivery addict. Like once you get it once, oh my God, it's so much easier. Anyways, go ahead.
Yeah, like for me, it's like food tastes better if you make it, if you know how to cook. If you're driving, I don't get hot, like, say gas. Let's make this an even interest with real estate. Why are you living somewhere that's not close to where you work if you're gonna get into real estate? If you're gonna go into an apartment complex, why are you moving 20 and 30 miles away from where you work? Because you just like it over there. Do you know how much it's gonna cost you back and forth every doggone day if you're doing a commute? Do you really want to do that? But I don't like it over there. You ain't gonna like paying $300 a month on gas either, and the time that takes. It's our addiction to convenience that makes this worse. Because even and I'll be honest, a lot of people might not understand what I'm about to say, and I'm not a rich guy. I've been around enough rich people to know this. At a certain point, they've made enough money to be themselves, and they're not gonna just waste money just because they got it. So if you want to be like a rich person, know what you like and buy what you like, and stop trying to buy stuff to impress people you'll never meet. Because that's not how rich people stay rich. They do what they like to do. They got enough money to give the world a finger. So treat the world the same way they do. I'm not buying that. They can F off. I don't need that. They can F off. I don't even like that. They can F off. But we're the opposite. You know what? I want to get a Rolex to put it on Instagram and drop my location. Nobody gonna rob me. You wasted. And this is and this is in a time of inflation.
Status. Buying things to signal status, because you just mentioned that Rolex, buy the Rolex, put it on Instagram, and that's your way of getting status out there. That's a human activity. And I'm not the kind of person, I'm a very matter-of-fact type of person. Human beings are social animals. Part of the social game is status. Like, that's not going to go away. If you think you don't play for status, I don't trust you, right? Just because you're playing a different kind of game for status, don't mean you're just out there. It's like, no. Come on, bro. Everybody has their way of signaling their status, their position, all that kind of stuff, right? But I like what you mentioned about know what you like. I realized this thing a long time ago, which is like, you gotta know, this is the size of this room, the flooring of this house, the way the kitchen is. This is my standard. Like, in other words, I could spend another $100,000. It's not gonna get any better. This particular apartment, that kind of, you get what I'm saying, right? Where you know, it happened to me this was probably 2014. It was this particular house I was in Orange County. I was like, you know what? This is it. Houses could be way, way, way more expensive, but the living room, the fixtures, and all these other types of things, I was like, this is the standard. So now I know, right? I'm not gonna just get drawn into spend all kinds of crazy money because I already know where my comfort level is. They talk about that number, right? It's about $75,000 or $100,000, whatever it is. There's a number where your basic needs are met. After that, there's diminishing returns in terms of every dollar that you spend on something. So when it comes to food, when it comes to cars, when it comes to even status signaling, know where that cap is. Because otherwise, it's just going to run away from you. Because what tends to happen with people is their money keeps going up and they just keep on raising up their lifestyle to go along with it, right? So they never actually make it out of the rabbit hole or the rat race or the hamster wheel, whichever way you want to put it. And that's why, by the way, little tangent here, I'm not a big fan of just sticking to, not a big fan of salary, let's say. I think salary is another addictive thing, right? I'm not saying this is not job shaming on none of that. I'm just saying that everything has bad sides, right? on the bad sides of salaries is very addictive, right? And it goes up gradually. And that way your lifestyle just tends to just go with it. But if you're someone who is in business where things go up and down, right? You're not just gonna all of a sudden move out because you had a good month and move all the way, to the rich part of town. That's not how it happens, because you know that things are kind of like, so when you have this kind of, if you have a solid, nice base plus spikes, it actually helps better for savings habits because you can save those spikes better. People who just have a base only and it just increases, they just increase their lifestyle as that base increases. And that's the trap that most Americans actually, in fact, find themselves in when you start looking at the numbers of people who don't have $1,000 for emergency and the people over 65 who don't have $100,000 saved. It'll shock you, right? We're like, what the hell has been going on all this time with the 401k and all these other types of things? They just keep on increasing. But anyways, shout out to Big $10 in the building. Thank you very much. Says, I've seen a guy life hack his car to utilize hydrogen gas and cut his gas consumption by half. Water, electrolytes, stainless steel plates. Yeah. All that galvanic and battery stuff and fission and fusion and all that type of stuff that's going on and people hacking it. It is in line with what LAR was saying. LAR said, food tastes better if you know how to cook. You know how to cook, if you know how to fix things, if you know where your standards are in terms of, what makes you comfortable. If you understand that you are status signaling and want to drop down the bill on your status signaling, we cut it down a notch, right? With all the crazy expensive drinks that you're buying and putting it on Instagram and all that kind of stuff. This is quite important. LAR said he grew up in the 80s and all this stuff is common sense to him. But overall, if you don't have cash right now, remember for the next time. In times of recession or times of economic downturn, when there's blood in the streets, cash is king because cash is optionality to buy things. Optionality, we have motivated sellers, right? People are motivated to give you their crap. It could be a business, some kind of asset, some kind of machinery, some kind of training. Things are on sale. Cash is king, and that's why the dollar is so high, because the king of cash is the dollar. Everyone is pulling out of the assets are plummeting in terms of, let's say risk assets, such as equities. And if I'm getting in my stock market analysis mode, forgive me, but people are pulling out a risk asset, the equities, all that stuff is plummeting, going into cash and going into dollars. The dollars are strong right now. If you had cash right now, you'll be in a great position. So just remember this, because it's going to happen again. It's going to be another time of economic downturn. So you want to know, okay, cool. Let me start dollar cost averaging some cash away from my paycheck, putting it away, because it is in times of recession that people are able to acquire certain assets where you have motivated sellers, where you have this exchange of value. Okay, so LAR, let's get back to the topic and start landing the plane this way. Some people have conspiracy theories about environmentalists, okay? Because we've said, look, they claim to care about people, which I don't buy. Whenever anyone says they care about people as a motivation, I remove it from the argument, because it just, whatever, doesn't influence whether 1 + 1 is 2. Later on, we can talk about your feelings. If they care about people, but the things that they say people should do, such as in Sri Lanka, actually hurts the people, kills these people, okay? Agriculture is going down. Some people now say, okay, look, it's about population control. They want to cut, the world population in half. Okay, not bad. Some people say, oh, it's just about socialism. They just want to control you, right? These people coming down from the penthouse telling you how much your energy consumption should be. They don't care about you. They just feel like controlling stuff. And they want to get control of the economy. Or some other type of crazy Bill Gates wants to use your body to form batteries because he's the Matrix, whatever. Do you subscribe to any of these types of theories with regards to why environmentalists want to control things, if you will?
I believe them, and I believe what Native Americans used to say, they talk with forked tongues. I believe them when they say they care about people, but they didn't mean you. They meant them. You know what I'm saying? I care about, they're telling you, the reason I want to do this is because I care about people. They're talking about their own people, not you. So that's why, when I look at it, I'm like, maybe y'all don't get how this conversation is going, because it's a double entendre in a sense. Do people care about climate change? No, they care about how climate change affects them. If and this is it's the thing about first world countries. People from first world countries always go to quote unquote third world countries. And a lot of them go to third world countries looking like, you know what? I could come up over here. I could get this for the cheap and bring this back. And I could live like or I could go there and I could live like a king off of what I got in this first world country. You know, as you were talking about like the gradual, the salary and gradual uptick in lifestyle or the business model, I was thinking about Rich Dad, Poor Dad. You know, and I think the same thing when I think about people who are talking about climate change. You know, they haven't saved their climate where they're at. So what they're doing is they're just going to another place and setting up shop there as a business resource to stabilize what they destroyed where they were in their own home.
Mm-hmm.
And people aren't really peeping, like, you know, you mean to tell me I live in Texas? So they're fracking, like somebody brought up fracking earlier. They're fracking, like, you know, not necessarily the Midwest, but like the mountain time area. So you mean to tell me in all these years of all this oil being in the United States, all the way to Alaska, what are they doing with it? Because we're concerned, we got to get oil from the Middle East, Africa, Central and South America, and now, you know, Russia, who we're supposed to be enemies with. Oh man, you know, because the thing going on in Russia, we can't get no oil over here. It's like, are you kidding me right now? But what does all this have to do with climate? Ask yourself the question: if we're so smart and we got so much money and so much technology, why does it take us so long to implement things that lower the cost of our energy consumption? As you talked about going nuclear earlier. Why would we do that? Because the same reason we talked last week, even about Jimmy Carter. Jimmy Carter wanted to go green in basically the 70s, early 80s. But guess who didn't want to do that? The United States. The guy that made the DeLorean, he got killed trying to make a more energy efficient car in the 80s. So we play these games like we care about people. No, we care about luxury. And we use things as a buffer to pad our luxury. And climate is just one of those things. Because if it was real, we would stop where we're at. You can't clean up. I can't tell you how to clean up your house if I never clean up my own. I come to your house and tell you it's dirty, but I never invited you into mine. You should know it's a setup right there.
Well said there. You're saying, okay, just like people go out from the West and go retire somewhere else, or they are passport bros, or they want to go live like a king somewhere else. You're saying, hey, you know, they've ruined the environment in the West, let's say, polluted things and messed up. But now let me go over here to this other corner of the world and tell them how not to mess it up so I can be comfortable there, right? Or control them, use them as some kind of a guinea pig, an experiment, a place where I can start up my startup companies for greening or whatever it may be. But at the end of the day, it's about money and whatnot. Ladies and gentlemen, we are coming to that time in the show, okay? Shout out to everyone in the building. Dig Thug, SOFC, Zone in the house. Nazarene Beats in the house, D in the house, Man of Tomorrow, thank you for the super chat. Also, same thing with Dig Thug. All right, so we went through, I would like to put it like this. It was consequences and intentions. So this is consequences of global warming and also consequences of the policies that are attempting to curb global warming. Okay, consequences of policies that are green policies. But you use Sri Lanka as a case study, and Sri Lanka is going through hard times because they took money from the IMF. Tied to that money was all kinds of things about what they're not allowed to use with regards to federalizing and whatnot. I said it's always a bad move to take advice from someone who is 10 yards away from you in the race, telling you how to run the race. It's a bad move, right? They may have good intentions, but you guys are not even in the same place. You have a totally different frame of reference. It doesn't work, okay? And we started talking about what exactly are the real intentions of people then. If they don't care about people, what could be some of the real intentions, some of the good things that may come out of this in terms of the Black community, and some of the bad things that may come out of this. Talk about, hey, maybe Black people need to stop complaining about how they're going to be disproportionately affected because they're disproportionately poor. How about you stop being disproportionately poor? And then Eliar said, but I have nowhere to go. Eliar said, but anyways, I don't know if you have any last words with regards to this. Okay, my main thing is nuclear power. Okay, I'm a nuclear power kind of guy. People keep thinking about Chernobyl and 3 Mile Island and all that type of stuff. The technology has long since improved. Watch videos by Bill Gates on nuclear power and how we can make cleaner nuclear technology. The problem with nuclear, obviously, is you have this. There's no emissions, which is great, but you have this waste product, like this thing. But look, there's a lot of space in the universe. People are like, oh, where are we going to store it? It's like, there's a lot of space on Earth, in the moon, and whatever. Forget about it. Talking about, I don't think it's a big issue. I don't think that the nuclear waste is really that big of an issue. I think all the waste that we've had so far could feel like a football field or something. But people keep thinking about this horror stories about how the whole Earth is going to be glowing green and all that kind of crap. So those are my last thoughts. I think there's a simple technological solution to this. A lot of technological solutions people don't look at because they're tied up with some kind of political concerns. They have lobby money from the fossil fuel industry. They got lobby money from the greening industry, or they're just stupid, or whatever it may be. But what are your final thoughts, Eliar?
First, we think we're gonna we know we're not getting superpowers from this nuclear waste, so we're not gonna do it. Most important thing I gotta probably have to say is gonna be sarcastic too. I wouldn't take advice from a country like America who wants to worry about global warming and climate change when green energy is nowhere near a priority like growing weed is. So that's where we're at. We would rather get high than fix anything. So we should know it's not gonna work out well. Let's put let's put solar energy on the books. I was thinking more about Kush. I was really thinking about some OG Kush. If we could subsidize this OG Kush, we could be billionaires. What about, we don't want our children to inherit a horrible world. Look, but if we leave them enough weed, they'll be so high they won't worry about it. Like, this is where we're at. So it's like, I care about, no.
Okay, Eliar.
Always gonna be legal in 10 years. My bad.
Oh man, always a pleasure, ladies and gentlemen. Always a pleasure. Come back next Sunday. And on this very channel, I'm going to be talking about charm versus charisma tomorrow. Now, these are both ways of emotionally influencing people, right? Emotionally getting people to do what you want them to do. It's not about rational argument. But charm is different from charisma. Have you ever thought about that? Ever thought about the difference between these two things? And the gifts that people somehow naturally have too, right? So which do you have? Are you more of a charming person or a charismatic person? What's the difference between these two? Things of charm, that's Bill Clinton, okay? Charm is about how they say it, how they smile, what they do, how they shake your hand, all that type of stuff, okay? Okay, you can see how people are naturally gifted at this type of stuff. And also you too can try to like, hey, maybe I need to work on my charm, work on my smile and my shaking and my walking and my perfume or whatever it is, and giving people compliments, okay? We understand what that is. But then there's charisma, okay? A charismatic person doesn't have to actually say anything to you. A charismatic person is someone whom you see as authentic, and you follow that person into the pits of hell, not because they shook your hand right or whatever. It's something that you see internally. Okay, so there's something internal about about charisma. There's something more external about charm. And as a matter of fact, they tend to be opposed to each other. In other words, people who are very charismatic tend not to be very charming. Because to be charismatic, you're a very authentic person. And when you're authentic, you don't do Bill Clinton stuff. You're like, I don't care about you. I don't want to talk to you. I want to slap your back. I don't want to smile. I want to kiss your baby, that type of stuff. So you see how you can maximize your charm if you're naturally charismatic, or gain some charisma, get more solidity and authenticity. And these are things that can be practiced, okay? This is all about game. This is all about selling. This is all about influencing people and all that kind of stuff, which is something I like to talk about, something I specialize in, if you will. So tomorrow I'm going to be breaking that down. Charm versus charisma, ladies and gentlemen. But until that time, thank you again, everyone in the chat. Thank you, LAR. Until next time, peace.
In the den of iniquity, vicinity no pretty, calamity fi hit we any moment, what a pity. Tomorrow never certain, what dwells behind the curtain, the face of evil smirking with that shifty eyes averting. It's not a steady bubble, could either pop or topple, many will fall and stumble, let the dozers gather rubble. From LA to Colorado, Guinea to Burkina Faso, cannons could breach the towers and the troops will storm the castle. I say, run, run, come, make we get it. Because the peace that is bestowed upon the meek is overrated. So run, run, come, make we get it. Calling all your daughters and your sons, we come forget it. I say, run, run, come, make we get it. Because the peace that is bestowed upon the meek is overrated. Lord, run, run, come, make we get it. Calling all your daughters and your sons, we come forget it. With the rubble steady rising, and hearts are compromising. Convictions here are stifling, making evil appetizing. The fists are steady forming, and countenance is falling. Defenses are withdrawing, possibilities are falling. In these your circumstances, evil will make advances. Pick up your sword and lances, and be sure to take your stances. Victory is never promised, the battle is upon us. Gather the brave and honest, and the righteous in your corners.